So, good morning, everybody. So for the next 20 minutes or so, and I have my clock counting down here, so I will stay to time, I'm going to talk about financial planning. I'm going to start with a slide which says there's never been a better time to get a freebie. The world of employee benefits at the moment is awash with all sorts of free stuff. Now, I was asked whether I would be brave enough to name names in this session. Now, I know that some of the people who provide some of those freebies are in the room. So if I name check them, they will be very happy. And there are other people in the room who provide these freebies, and if I don't name check them, they will lynch me after the meeting. So I'm going to stay agnostic. I'm not going to tell you which are the good ones, which are the bad ones, and all that type of good stuff, because it's not worth it. Buy me a beer afterwards, and I might be slightly less circumspect. But needless to say, there are lots and lots of stuff out there. So really, the purpose of today is to try and help you navigate and understand which types of things do you actually want to be able to offer to your workforce. And I've put it into 4 categories here. So education, assessment, modelling, and action. So under education, you've got education sites, the likes of Money Advice Service. Therefore, I've named one already, so I've broken my own golden rule. You've got lots of providers out there. I'm one of those, and we have some stuff which is available for free. And you have your own resources as well. Never underestimate what you've already got in your kit bag. Under the assessment piece, this for me is a really interesting one. So you've got the likes of credit checks, you've got the likes of budgeting, you've got the likes of comparison sites. And certainly my experience with a lot of those is, they will ask you a lot of questions, and actually employees will normally get to question 5 out of 70 and actually go, I'm bored. And the dropout rate on those things is absolutely enormous. And actually, if we're thinking about financial wellness in the workplace, why are we bothered? Financial distress means that people aren't focusing at work, which means you've got a presenteeism issue. That may lead to an absenteeism issue. It's actually about how people feel. So actually in the assess piece, and I'll come on to this later in this slot, actually getting hold of something which kind of gauges how people are feeling about their finances. And I'm a former actuary, so talking about feelings is completely counterintuitive to me. But actually, it's feelings which drive how I'm productive or not in the workplace. So actually, that's quite an important piece for me. You'll hear lots of other sessions today about modelling. So wealth modelers, retirement modelers, there's mortgage calculators, there's the budget calculator that's on the BBC website from yesterday. There's all sorts of stuff out there. And then, all of that is leading to you wanting to point your employees at something that they can therefore do. So whether that's making their money go further through discount provision, whether it's accessing a salary loan, whether it's actually accessing benefits that you've already got. So, the most underutilised benefit that you probably have in your arsenal is your employee assistance program. Guess what? There's probably financial counselling in there. I've been in front of many, many employees saying, what benefits have you got? Open-ended question. And I'll tell you, no one has ever said, we've got an employee assistance program. Actually, that's a really powerful piece of your kit. So actually, understanding some of that is really important. Now, having said that, do your employees actually want your help? So we do an employee insight survey every year. We ask 2,000 employees a whole bunch of questions. And one of the questions we asked them this year was, where do you go for financial advice? Now, the employer, you, is right down at the bottom. Right at the top is Google. So overwhelmingly, people are going to Google to get financial advice. It's simple, it's quick, it's easy, it's accessible. It's personal, and the personal one is really important. So talking about your finances in the workplace is still one of those great taboos. So we're starting to see things like mental wellness being talked about in the workplace. That's starting to break down. Is financial wellness the next taboo that's going to get broken down in the workplace, or are people just going to continue to go to Google? So we were interested by this. So we thought, well, actually, that's what employees are saying. What are they actually doing in reality? So we actually looked at some Google Trends. So we looked at a 12-month window, and we thought, let's just pick a few random topics. So we picked pensions. We picked Theresa May. She had a reasonably busy year last year. Andy Murray, Wimbledon. And let's not forget Beyonce's baby. That's the most important one in all of this. But what's interesting is you can see that there are spikes when things have actually happened. So you've got the general election, you've got the baby, you've got the album, you've got Wimbledon and all that sort of thing. But the constant that runs through that is pensions. And actually, if you look at the average trends over that 12-month period, pensions is head and shoulders above Beyonce. Who'd have thought that? Which, says to us that's where people are going, okay? Now, Google is a great resource. I'm not here to say, you should be worried about Google. But actually, if I think about financial wellness and people accessing education, that's simple, plain English, private, that ticks all of the boxes. What about impartial? If I'm going to Google, am I getting impartial advice? So I was going to show you 3 sides, which I was going to title The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but actually I'm going to call it The Good, the Less Good, and Really Not So Good. This is just 3 searches on Google. So the first one is a search, Free Budgeting Tools UK. And if you can see those, you see that you've got independent bodies coming up as the top hits on Google. Money Advice Service, Money Savings Expert, The Guardian, Financial Services Compensation Scheme, and Citizen Advice. So for me, that's good, because that ticks the box of being impartial. If I click on Free Retirement Tools, you'll see here organisations now starting to invest quite a lot of money in understanding Google Analytics. So actually, and I'm not knocking any of these, I'm just saying these guys have done well. They've driven the analytics well. So you've got Aviva there, you've got Standard Life there, you've got Virgin Money there. So, again, you have to ask yourself the question, when an employee is going to these sites, is it relevant and is it completely impartial? And then you get Google Ads. So what do I do if I've been refused a loan is the search. Ad number 1, bad credit, still need a loan. Ad number 2, bad credit, unsecured loan. Ad number 3, being refused a loan. So, you're starting to get this picture of, Google is where people are going, but are they being impartially served by going to Google, is the question that we would ask. So employers are saying they're going to Google, they're not going to their employer. So that begs the question in me, is that because they don't want to talk to their employer about it? Or is it because they feel today they're not being terribly well served by their employer in relation to financial? So again, going back to our Employee Insights survey that we do, 72.8% of employees expect their employer to provide guidance on their employee benefits and tell them how appropriate they are for them and their family. So the demand is there. There is just a sense that they're not being served by it. Now, interesting, if I go back to the last REBA session, where there was a survey done at the last REBA session and actually said, ask the audience, how many employers are thinking about introducing financial wellness, and it was something like 20% in the next 12 months and something like 50% in the next 2 or 3 years. So what you've got here is a coming together of there's more stuff out there, employees want it, and employers are saying they want to provide it. So it feels like, financial wellness and financial education has been talked about for such a long time. We're actually moving away from talking to actually doing now. So this feels like it's an exciting time. And I think it's partly fueled by, going back to where we started, there are just more providers actually providing solutions that are right and appropriate and will work in the employer environment. So it feels like this is actually quite an exciting time to be thinking about financial wellness within the workplace. So where we are, where have we got to? We've got to employees are going to Google, but is it appropriate? Employers or employees are actually saying to the employers, I want some advice, but I want you to make it relevant to me. So what is relevant? So again, this is where understanding your workforce and understanding the profile of your workforce is important. So again, some data here looking at different age bands. And actually the thing that stands out for me is actually irrespective of age, the number 1 hit of what people are saying they want is learning how to save more for retirement. So if we put ourselves out there and say 20-year-olds are not interested in pensions, actually that's not necessarily the case. Now, what's interesting is their time horizons might be different, but they do recognise that they need to save for what happens when I stop working at the age of 65, 67, whatever my state pension age may be. But from there, you then see that there is then a difference of what people are looking for at different ages. So if I start with the 16 to 34-year-olds, it's actually, how do I set a budget? How do I pay down my debts? How do I learn to save for a mortgage? Whereas actually if I go to the other end of the spectrum, actually those things are really dampened down. So by the time I get to age 55, I've got other priorities. Very much it's around pension, understanding my income, but actually paying down debts and learning about mortgages is less of a priority for those age groups. And then moving on to this time horizon piece, we also ask people, what are your priorities 3 months, 12 months, 3 years? And what's interesting, you see here that point around retirement is important for everybody, but actually if you look down to the retirement line, you'll see that the time horizon is really important. So within 3 months, 8%, 12 months, 10%, 3 years, by the time you get to 3 years, it's the number one priority for everybody across the board. So actually that time horizon piece is really important. So when you're thinking about what interventions to put in place, you need to think about not only the demographic, but actually what am I going to put on the table that will help people today, and what am I going to put on the table that will help people in 2 or 3 years' time? You kind of need to think about both of those pieces coming together. Why do you care? I think this is a debate which is kind of largely resolved. I think people agree that financial wellness is an issue. Here's some stats that might help you with that if you need to be putting forward a business case within your organisation. And this is collected from a number of sources. 1 in 3 employees say at some stage in their working life they've lost sleep because of money worries. I'm not going to read out all of these stats. 59% of employees with current financial worries say it affects their performance at work. And what's interesting for me is 89% of employers agree with them. So actually you've got employers, 89% of employers saying financial stress in my organisation is impacting the productivity of my organisation. And then to try and put a number on it, that's estimated to cost about 4% of UK payroll, or £121 billion. I always struggle with £121 billion because it's just too big a number to get your head around. But actually, on average, it's costing my organisation 4% of payroll. That's a lot of money not going to the bottom line. And actually, if I can do anything to improve that even slightly through a financial intervention, then I can make a big difference in my organisation. So that's the business case. That's what people want. That's the rationale for why employers should care. What are the things you should think about as you're thinking about financial wellness? If you're of an age, you remember the film Field of Dreams, if we build it, they will come. We all know in the world of employee benefits, it doesn't work like that. You've got to actually get out there and shout about this. So how do you impress upon people value? How do you get them to engage? I think the answer is actually what's in the middle column. You personalise it. You make it relevant to that individual. You understand the individual that you're talking to, and you provide education and solutions which are relevant to that individual. So if I'm a 22-year-old, I wish I was, and I was financially distressed, talk to me about pensions all you want, I ain't listening. Talk to me about salary loans, talk to me about paying down my debts, talk to me about doing credit check scores, talk to me about what is a mortgage, I'm listening. If I'm a 55-year-old and I'm actually financially okay, broadly me, then actually I want to know about how much do I need to save into my pension, what is freedom and flexibilities, actually how do I save money for my kids, school fees, inheritance tax, wills, all that type of good stuff. Boring stuff, but all that type of really important stuff. So actually understanding the individual and actually saying, I know who you are, I know where you sit, therefore these are the things that are relevant for you, that's how you get traction with your people. Overcoming the taboo is still really important. So understanding that, an employee understanding that this is something which is available for them and their employer isn't looking over their shoulder and going, you can't manage your way out of a paper bag. It's about time you left the organisation. That's really important. So actually having something which is safe and secure for them to go to, knowing that Big Brother isn't watching. But nevertheless, some kind of measure that goes with that, because actually, if you invest in this, you need a return on investment. You need to go back to the board and say, we did this and it had this result. And it's either through measuring absenteeism and presenteeism, or maybe it's through Google Analytics and whatever your solution is, saying, actually, we found that 25% of our workforce have been consuming all of the information around mortgages. That's powerful MI for you, because then you can say, well, actually, we need something tailored specifically around that as an intervention for our workforce. So what does it look like as a total journey? So for me, it is a journey. You don't just throw a product out there and hope for the best. You take the employee through some form of assessment. And that assessment, as I said earlier, needs to be around how people are feeling. That gives you a sense of their level of stress or not. You then gather some demographics from that person. So now I've got, are they stressed or not? What age group are they in? What earnings bracket are they in? That data allows me to then mine that and say, I will give you education that is relevant to you in your personal situation. And then from that, only when I've consumed that education, because actually this is about self-help. Financial wellness isn't about you putting lots and lots of money on the table, it's about self-help. It's about helping the employee to understand where they are, helping them to consume some relevant education, and actually reach their own conclusions about what they therefore need to do. That old adage, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, give him a fishing rod, he'll feed his entire village. That's what wellness is in my world. Whether you agree with that or not, we can debate afterwards, but that's where it is in my world. And then once that individual has then hopefully taken some action, you want them to come back and see this again so that they can see that they've had some measurable impact on their financial wellness as they've gone through that journey. So I'm going to finish very quickly with what for me I think are the essential ingredients for you to think about. Understand your audience, provide the support where it is most needed. So understand their level of financial wellness or not, understand their demographic, provide short-term and long-term solutions that go with that, and personalize that experience to them. If you give them just-in-time relevant information, you'll get much more traction if it's just, I'm just going to throw it all up and hope for the best. Life events really matter. So whether it's whether it's having a baby, whether it's buying a house, getting divorced, etc., etc., etc. And so on it goes. Communicate, measure your results, and then actually go back and refine it and see how it goes, and then continue. And finally, just before I finish, remember that actually financial wellness doesn't sit on its own. Financial wellness is part of an overall wellness proposition. So you've got mental wellness, you've got physical wellness, you've got work-life balance. Actually put it all together in an overarching offering. Okay. So my 1-minute flag has gone up, so I am now done. So I think we're going to open it up to any questions.
Yeah, well, thank you very much indeed, Martin. That was really great. So appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've got the questions up there for the quarters. I had one job. So we've got the topic. Great question at the top there. Probably the only one we'll get time to take. So let's go for that one. How do you make the business case for financial wellness to your executive team? Justify the spend and the time.
So for me, I would go back to that slide I showed around the statistics in terms of the cost that financial distress is having on organisations. It is pretty irrefutable, I think, that productivity is a major issue for the UK economy. It was all over the budget yesterday. And one of the things that is driving that is actually, it's not absenteeism, it's presenteeism. It's people where, they're in the office, the lights are on, but not a lot is happening because they've got other things going on in their mind. And, the statistics would say that it's costing about 4% of UK payroll. We commissioned a piece of research by the Centre for Evidence-Based Management, and they, that slide I showed you was people like me. So people with a vested interest in flogging you stuff, basically. Even if it is free, we get paid one way or another. The Centre for Evidence-Based Management backed up those statistics, and that's academic research. So that's academics going back over the last 20 or 30 years saying financial distress does impact productivity in the workplace.